for one, I gotta say this Louis Armstrong Black and Blue film was absolutely amazing. It was a beautiful, I think, demonstration and portrayal of the complex person that Louis Armstrong was. And for somebody who, I'm a little younger, I was not being as familiar with his story. I learned a lot about who Louis Armstrong was throughout this film. So I greatly appreciate you telling that story in a very, I feel like concise but also very entertaining way.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to say, just from the entertainment perspective, there is so much to enjoy about it, from the restoration of that footage and the never before heard like audio clips that you had got. Like, how many hours of never released footage and audio did you have to comb through in making this documentary?
Well, the audio he created himself in his home, and it was just conversations that he had with friends or his wife, or just him speaking his mind. I don't know how many hours of that. There's a lot of it. And we tried to go for the stuff that made him feel human, the stuff that made him feel vulnerable and made him feel like someone you might know. Because, I didn't know that much about Louis Armstrong. He's a superstar. I know he's a superstar. I know my grandparents loved him. I know the music. But the person you hear on the tapes is not who I expected. And I think that in and of itself is the attraction. And that's where like someone like Nas comes in, because, I grew up with Nas, and Armstrong reminds me of people that we grew up with. Funny, stylish, creative, smart, but they didn't necessarily have those opportunities, right? Armstrong was the guy who made it. Nas was the guy who made it, So I felt that there was a rapport and a synergy there. And, Nas having such a distinctive voice, I felt that he would be able to bring something memorable to the film. And Nas told me that Wonderful World was his favorite song of all time. So when he told me that, I said, I know I got to get this guy in here.
And I feel like you're so right on the money, because Louis Armstrong was like a revolutionary, and what jazz music was doing at that time was delivering a social message way before, like you addressed in like the film addressed in the documentary, how the music was addressing social issues a lot of times before politicians were and before government was. So I thought that was very fascinating. And, we're talking about like modern musicians like Nas, and I know recently like Jay-Z had some comments that, kind of went viral on Twitter about like his political stance and like that kind of stuff. How would you fit, and I know this documentary kind of addresses how Louis Armstrong kind of was a little bit apolitical publicly, but he had political thoughts like in his private life. How do you think that will play out in like today's society?
Well, the thing that people should understand, that Armstrong was, getting booked in all these white hotels and places that Black people weren't able to go. And he said, if you want me to play here, I've got to stay here. Right? So right there and then, that's activism. He's changing the dynamic of where we can go. So people aren't thinking about that. And I think that move is kind of what folks like Jay-Z these days do behind the scenes. Jay-Z isn't out marching, but sometimes he's, using his clout to make different kinds of changes, or at least people enlist him because they know he's a trusted voice to help make change sometimes. So again, I think Armstrong was early to that before anybody else.
Yeah, definitely. And I definitely appreciate you, rapping about this movie with us at Geeks of Color. And thank you for, putting this film together and exposing Louis Armstrong to a new generation.
All right, man. Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Have a good one.